Hey everybody, welcome to another Awaken Your Relationships. I am Julie Murphy and I am the money chick, but Rita here is the relationship chick. And we just thought we'd talk about what does a healthy woman look like emotionally, because that's not validated in our society. Actually, we focus more on who the bitch is, right? Not what a healthy woman looks like emotionally. So we thought we'd talk about that today. So, what do you think, Rita?
Well, a lot of women right now are doing generational work, as in they're reversing things, ideas, or survival patterns that were passed down from their grandmothers or their
That's
great
so true.
grandmothers and their great great grandmothers. And women are getting to a point where they're looking at that they have resources, that they can stand on their own feet, that they're smart, that they've got community. Women are feeling stronger and they're realizing they need to let go of these old patterns of what a good woman looks like, because we don't
Right.
need to be that way anymore. Women as a whole, the world has evolved. Women as a whole do not need to hide in caves. There's this interesting research they did. It was on, and we might have talked about it before, it was on testosterone. Women who live in countries where they have no health insurance are more attracted to pictures of men who have higher levels of testosterone because their facial features are different. And so if someone had high testosterone, their face would look a certain way. And if they didn't, it would look a different way. Women, when they feel insecure or unsafe, like they won't be able to take care of their children, are more likely to be attracted to men who have more aggression, who have more determination, who are more of the male attributes. If they're in a country with good health insurance and they have a reasonable level of safety, then they choose men who are more partners. They choose men who
Fascinating.
share things, and it's all based on health insurance. Even something as simple as that. So we've been living for who knows how many generations uh, in a place of survival. But when we look around the world, we don't live there anymore. And women need to start shedding these old beliefs that were embedded in our head from the Catholic Church, from magazines, from men themselves. Men would love for women to be a certain way for the most part. Unhealthy men would love for women to be barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen. I mean, it would be an ideal
I my
place for them.
dad.
Plus bringing all the money on the side because they're independently wealthy, but whatever.
That's my ex-husband.
But
This is
that's
my dad
not
and my ex-husband to a T.
this is not real. And
No,
because
it's
it's
not.
not real, women are not going to stand for it anymore because we don't need to. And so we're starting to shed these outdated ideas about submissiveness and subservience and that we need to please men, and because that's just not true. We're an equal human being. Women have emotions, women have bad days, women get angry, women are passive aggressive, women are joyful. But in a selfish society where we don't see anyone but our own selves, women and minorities, many times get the shaft because no
Right.
one's paying attention. And if women don't stand up for their rights to be whole, healthy women who have issues, who are walking their own path, if we don't stand up for that right, we'll just continue to be railroaded like we've been for
Right.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And we conformed to that idea so that we could survive in a dangerous society. And we don't live there anymore.
Right. Well, what's fascinating to me is, like, even when you say this, like, I had my daughter say something to me yesterday that was something that was similar to what I could recall saying to my mother, right? So when we're in our divine feminine power, when we're actually in our power, we're not confrontational and in your face. And my daughter was being confrontational and in your face yesterday. And I was just like, and so she saw it as a sign of weakness, just like I saw in my mother a sign of weakness, that she would take the step back and allow you to be in whatever emotions you were. And she would accept that you were in a place that was something she was not going to participate in. Like I can see that that's what my mother was doing. She was in her
Smart
divine
woman.
feminine.
Smart woman.
Yeah. And but to me it was just like engage, here I am. Talk to me. Like get, and it
That's
was
the devil, that's Satan coming. I mean, it, it's just basically it's being dysregulated, our nervous system's off balance, and so then our shadows come out. But you were demonically possessed, and she was letting you work it out.
right. Well, and watching that, I said to my daughter yesterday, I said, don't confuse silence with weakness. And I said, there isn't a time and a place to have that communication, but it's not necessarily in the masculine way of, I'm going to push and get in your face, right? Because that's masculine energy. That's not divine feminine energy. Divine feminine energy allows, accepts. What were you
Well,
going to
not just that, divine feminine energy connects with other kick-ass women so that we know we're not alone. We're able to accept because we've got community behind us and strength behind us, more than a single man will ever have.
say?
And a lot of it is women have gravitated towards male ways of doing things because they haven't had enough good role models about how women do things.
Mm,
Women do community.
right.
Women do getting in line with the flow, we're like ocean waves.
Yep.
That's our role in the world. But girls aren't taught that.
Right.
They aren't taught that there's strength in being in a woman. You're able to be flexible because you have a whole army of women behind you that will protect you when necessary. But if
Right.
you don't know how that works, then you gravitate towards the male model because that's what you see everywhere and that's what works in our capitalistic society.
Yeah. Well, and I had somebody say to me not too long ago, it takes two people to fight. So if you choose not to fight and just stand in your power and just be like, but we've taken in our capitalistic society that fighting is power. But it actually takes your power away, because I had a friend of mine say to me early on in my divorce process, my neighbor, she said to me, Joel, you don't operate in the world the way that he operates in the world. So you're never going to win a game playing the game the way somebody else plays it, because they're already a master at being themselves. You're not a master at being them. You're a master of being you.
What a
So
smart
do
friend.
things in your way, not in his way, and then you won't be stuck in the game. And that was sage advice very early on in my process,
Mhm.
because I did, not easy, because you can get hooked, in your old patterning, right? We all have old patterning and stuff like that. But, to detach from it and just be like, you know what? It's okay, to be yourself. And because we know what that is, it's just that we've been trained and taught that to not trust your own way of plugging into the world. Like we are trained to say, fix that part of yourself because it's not really good, and conform over here and do it this way.
I think
Particularly women.
growth and maturity process. If we
Yeah.
stay stuck in our childhood phase, there's strength and safety from conforming with people because you are in danger.
Right.
You are vulnerable as a kid. You don't have all
Right.
that. And it's a maturing process that allows you to realize you are both safe and you can be a unique individual.
Right.
So it's a growing up, and most people just aren't encouraged to go to that next level of thinking that
Right.
they can be uniquely, they're supposed to be uniquely themselves,
Hmm.
because the messages are still, for 12-year-old girls of how you need to conform.
Totally. Yeah, it's just absolutely fascinating to me how um when we align with ourselves, then we feel more grounded, more peaceful, and in that process, it's holding strong boundaries, right? Of what's true for you. And I've been one through the years who has negotiated myself away, and all those people I negotiated myself away to, they all came back and said, um, It's you're the problem, Julie. And it was because I wouldn't negotiate myself away. Then all of a sudden I was the problem. It was like, well, it's not really how it works in my book. Like, I'm just actually holding a boundary that's true for me. And you'd like to project because you're uncomfortable with me not playing your game. So it's like, okay, how do I, then be standing and being in your power, which is super important.
Yeah, a lot of times women think to themselves, at least I thought to myself, I don't know what everybody thinks. I thought to myself that that standing in my power meant that I had to manipulate a situation. And in reality, standing in my power, other people aren't going to like because it doesn't serve them. And the faster we realize those kind of truths about reality, the faster we can work with it instead of wondering why this is happening to me. Just be like, yeah, people are going to be jerks. They're going to take it out on you. They're going to be thinking about themselves. They're going to be doing that. And if I try to manipulate them through that, it's all going to blow up. But if I just tell
Totally.
them the truth straight out about what I need and what I want, and I respect myself,
Right.
it creates the change. And
Totally.
people aren't going to like it because a growing up process for all of us is uncomfortable and painful. Your bones ache and you don't know how it's going to go. And that's why coaching's getting bigger, because people really needed support in their lives and they don't have it anymore to work through the difficult things.
Well, and that really brings up a great point in terms of the fact that, you don't have to have it all figured out yourself. Some people will say to me, Jewel, why do you talk to all these coaches? Why do you do these things? I'm like going, because clearly I don't have the tools and I want to learn the tools faster so I can get to the next place that makes me happier, faster. Like, you could certainly figure it all out on your own. There's no doubt. You could read books, you could figure it out, blah, blah. I have found by pulling in a coach, it goes by way faster, way more efficient because, Rita, I'll never forget when I found you, I was like listening to your Facebook lives and like I literally every time you'd pop up, I'd be like, you would like say one more thing. I'm going, she's talking about my life. I'm like, this lady gets it. I was like, oh my God, like I'm literally living this day in and day out. And I literally watched you for probably a year before I actually picked up the phone and called you and said, I need to do some sessions with you because I had put it all on my shoulders. I tried to do it myself. And then I was like, you know what? She knows exactly what I'm dealing with, exactly what I need to work around because I'm not going to play this game anymore. And everything I tried wasn't working, which was the way I had prior plugged into the world. But when you're dealing with someone who doesn't play the same game as you do, if you will, so I'm an empath and I was dealing with a narcissist. And those are two different ways to plug in the world, two completely different ways to plug in the world. And so when I started to recognize the difference between the two, I was going, oh, now I know. Now I get it. Because now I can see you've said to me over and over again, it's not about him. Every single person who has this situation going on in their life operates the same way. So I could take the personalization out of it and then just see it going, oh, then I came from a place of compassion as opposed to reactivity. And then holding this space going, oh. And then I saw how I would pour gasoline on it because I was coming from my traumatized self. And so it's like, oh, got it. And so this is where, again, Rita and I have talked about this. If you've watched any of our videos over the last year, that it's really about that you can't shift and change other people. You can only shift and change yourself.
Well, and that brings us back to the topic of today's call, which is women's power is connecting into community. And we've been emotionally isolated because we're easier to control when we are disconnected from our circle of women.
Yep.
And we literally have to remember and create these natural things. I mean, if you go to Japan, what is it? Okinawa? No, it's not Okinawa. It might be Okinawa. The women there live to be like 124 because they've got these circles of women they've had in their lives their entire life.
Mm,
And it's that circle of community. And women have been taught that we can't trust other women, that we
right.
have to behave like men, that we'll never be successful as women, that if we don't do it by ourselves, our education system taught us this. If we don't do it by ourselves, then it doesn't really count.
Right.
And that goes completely against women's power, which is about community and relying on each other and being
Totally.
stronger together than we are apart. But women have been destroyed. Those circles have been destroyed, and we have to rebuild them. And that's what coaching and that's what getting together, for these medicine circles and all of that. Men needed ceremony, ritual. They needed to prove themselves.
Right.
Women needed to get together in quilting bees, you know in factories. They during the war, the women who worked in the factories, they set it up differently because women were more social. They had their community, and so they set it up to be community and social. But when men worked at the factories, it was very independent. Everybody does their own job. It's just differences between how we work,
Well,
and we're
do you know,
both
I have my kids, my kids go to a grammar school where after kindergarten, they separate the boys and the girls for exactly all the reasons that you're talking about.
yeah.
Because they just operate differently. Like girls like their notepads and their pens and they get it out from a writing perspective. Like they do that stuff. And the boys got to move, 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 move. And it's again not good or bad. It's just that they learn the exact same material, but it's taught in a different way. The boys are taught in movement and the girls is more about, like you said, the community. Like they set their desks up differently in the classroom and they do. Yeah, it's really fascinating to me. So I wholeheartedly understand exactly what you're talking about because that's one of the things that drew me to send my kids to the school that they're at.
Right, because how they actually work is respected, but in the greater scheme of things, how women work in our country is not respected.
Correct.
And because of that, women have gotten forced into a corner where
Mhm.
they feel like they have to start becoming stronger, more assertive versions of themselves because no one else is looking out for their emotional needs, and
Mhm.
they're isolated from their community of women, their circle of women.
Right.
So we're like trapped animals many times.
Right.
Starting to look at all of the Harvey Weinstein stuff and the Me Too movement, and women are getting to that place in evolution where we don't need to rely on men in order to be happy and healthy, and so we're starting to stand our ground.
Right.
And it's going to be fun and interesting to watch how it goes underneath the leadership of more women in our world.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Not to say
sure.
men are bad, it's just we work differently and we have different.
It's like I said it to my daughter the other day. She was talking about something with the Bible and I said to her, I go, "Honey, the Bible has some really great messages in it." I said, "I just want you to be aware that it was written by all men though. So it was only written by 50% of the population."
Right, and most of the materials already, was weeded out, and
Right. I said, so just be mindful. Yes, there are nuggets in there that are great, and you
yes.
can have takeaways from that, but also know that anything that doesn't represent the whole is just a piece of the picture, you
Well,
know?
when you start, I've been watching Ancient Civilizations a lot. It talks a lot about Egypt and higher technologies and civilizations that really had their stuff together,
Mhm.
and the reasons why. And a lot of what's in the Bible are also allegories for things that really happened in the world.
Mhm.
So in many ways, the stories in the Bible reflect actual things which happened somewhere in time in some way,
Mhm.
and it's more metaphorical, so
Right.
that people can grasp the essence of the message in the story,
Right.
and keep, like an oral tradition, keep passing down the truth. But like the telephone game, it gets distorted through time.
Yeah, that's true. And so, like, one of the things that we haven't talked about in a long time that seems to be coming up with a lot of my clients lately is watching people, because there's a lot of stressful stuff going on in our society. And so, can you share with people again those 5 stress response systems? Because I think that it's important. Like, what does a healthy emotional woman look like? Well, you kind of need to recognize when you're in stress response. And without knowing what those are, I think that that would be very important to share again for those people who haven't heard it before.
Yeah. We were taught that when that it's normal to have 5 different stress responses, that it's okay to disassociate, that it's okay to pick a fight, it's okay to people please, it's okay to put your blinders on and be in denial, it's okay to be rigid in our thinking. We
Mhm.
put that on people and say, oh, that's just their personality. When in reality, those are all stress responses. And
Yep.
there's one more reality that we need to embrace, which is not being stressed.
Right.
So we're either stressed and exhibiting people pleasing, where we'll whatever you want, whatever, it's no problem. I'm happy to do it. Whatever makes you comfortable, it's okay. To fighting, you did this to me and I know that it's going to happen. To disassociating,
Yep.
what I no, I don't know what happened. I really, what time is it? People who were chronically late, things like that. Rigid thinking, which is nope, it's either black or right. It's either up or down. OCD kind of comes from this. Or,
Like sitting here going, I'm sitting here going, oh, like my Mary Kate is a people pleaser. My Bridget does the fighting. My Timmy is the rigid thinker. Okay, you haven't given me my Michael yet.
okay, so the last one is you put your blinders on, you put your head down, and you just work hard. And then, because if you don't see anything, if you don't pay attention to it, it'll take care of itself, you hope. But
Yeah,
then you live in a level of anxiety because you're because anything can attack you from anywhere because you're focused on your work. So those are really just being off balance. Those are really being in fight or flight. They're not personalities. That's not who we are. That's how we behave when we're stressed out.
yep,
So the only answer, and that, let's say in a metaphysical term, that's not being in love. If love is everything that exists, and the only thing that isn't love is something that's not love, that's all those stress patterns. That's not love. The answer is coming back into harmony within yourself, which means bringing yourself back into a state of feeling good and happy.
right.
So it's the difference between getting angry and starting a fight, or getting angry and going for a walk in the woods where you talk to the squirrels and you hug a tree.
Yeah, right.
And so if people learn how to recognize when they are exhibiting a stress response or when someone else is exhibiting a stress response, we're actually seeing what's going on. We're seeing the truth. We can say, wow, they're really stressed out. And even if we're reacting, because we can't control our reaction, it just
Right.
happens, we're able to then say, oh, look, I'm having a stress response. I need to take care of myself. I can't take care of them. And that's when you make yourself the cup of tea, you protect you move to the hotel, to give yourself some space. So the
What are
key,
you saying when I moved to the hotel? No.
yes, exactly. So I mean, the key is recognizing when you're stressed out because you're probably picking up someone else's dysregulation, and then taking care of yourself so that you come back to a place of joy. And then if that other person hasn't figured it out, now you've got the resources to help them calm down too. But you can't help people calm down energetically if energetically you're, an orchestra that's falling apart. you know you have to be back in tune and in
Well, and
harmony
that's
before you
that's
can help.
that says a lot. Like, I want to highlight that phrase that you said. Usually, you're stressed out because you're picking up someone else's dysregulation when they're not regulated. And I know
Mhm.
that, you know, it's funny. I learn everything in business first, and then I pull it into my personal world because business just seems to be easier because it's not as personal, right? And so like I can sit there and watch.
Objectivity.
What's that?
You have objectivity because it's a thing. It's not a
Right. So like I can sit there and have, so for an example, a few weeks ago, I had this client who she just, her projections were just brutal. Like pages long and emails. Everybody cringed when she called the office. And she finally just like did it one too many times. And she's like, well, I'm thinking of getting somebody else because you guys are crappy. In essence, that's what her email was. And and she wanted to talk about how crappy we were. And I just said, you know what? I can look at it, I can observe it and go, you know what? I'm okay with not knowing all the whys, but let me help you get you to where you want to be because I agree our business relationship's over. And because it's her not being regulated and stressed out that created that projection. And what often happens, particularly I watch this with employees that are younger and that when they haven't built the muscles yet, like they'll sit there and they'll be like, I'm sorry, and da 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 da. And so they take on that person's distress, but and then they're people pleasing, just trying to satisfy her. And it's like it creates this dysfunctional cycle that just keeps going. And it's like, yeah, no, not okay with it. And it's like, and it was really fascinating. Almost 2 weeks to the day, I had another female client do almost the exact same thing. She balls out, was just like, "Pooh," and neither female at this juncture is willing to look at their stuff, right? And it's okay because everybody does it in their own timing. It's totally perfect, right? You can do it in whatever timing is perfect for
yeah,
you,
yeah.
right?
It's rude for you to interfere with some natural unfolding.
Right. So the next person that went, she held the boundaries, and I contemplated and I said, okay, it was interesting because she said, I'm not paying you for this because I don't value this, meaning she didn't pay her bill for the last couple of years, but she was paying us on this other side. And really what she communicated is like, I value this, I don't value this. Okay, well, in her own stress responses, and for the last couple of years, she kept saying she was going to mail this in and she didn't do it. And I gave it a good faith and we kept doing the work for her because she just wanted to fly under the radar. And then it's on me to then say, you know what, am I okay with just providing this service and then writing this off and chalking it up to a learning experience?
Well, then are you okay having this sort of person in your life?
Exactly. And to me, it's about, well, let's hold the boundary and see how because then it was really interesting because then her spouse asked me to do this service and I said, I'd be happy to, but you've got to pay me for it. And and then she cut him off and said, nope, like we're not doing this. I can figure this out myself. Da, 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 da. And I was just like, and then at the end of it all, the husband goes, well, thanks for the marriage counseling session today. And I giggled because it had nothing to do with finance. It had everything to do with, I could finally see, I could observe their own stress response system to what is unspoken actually in their marriage that had nothing to do with me. And I was like, oh,
And
now
that's the
I
wisdom
see.
that comes from regulating your nervous system. So
Right.
when you don't regulate your nervous system, then you get caught up in the drama. But
Mm,
when you do regulate your nervous system, you take a few steps back and you can see from a higher perspective and you're able to let go easier because you
totally.
see what's happening and it doesn't have anything to do with you.
Right. And so I've learned that on the business front, and then it leaks over because I always say that if you change it in one area of your life, then it starts to leak over into the other areas of your life. And so it's really just about loving yourself enough. You said it earlier that there's these stress response systems, and then the other one is how to not live stressfully, like because I'm really clear that the weight won't come off my body because the cortisol shifting through my system. Super clear about it because I shrink up every single time I'm getting really good at reducing that stress level and cortisol through my system. Like I was amazed at what I experienced with my daughter yesterday because she was dysregulated and what she had coming at me. And I just sat there, and even, we talked about it before we got on, that I just then pulled the car over and let her have her moment. And she really got in my face, like screaming at me. And most parents would be like, jump back at her and try to shut her down. And I just let her have her moment. And I said, let me know when you're done, because you're not talking to me this way, because it's disrespectful. And we will sit here until you then apologize to every person in this car, because we don't deserve to be treated that way. We need to figure out a way for you to communicate what you're feeling. And we want to hold a safe space for you to do that.
Right. And by you doing that, you role modeled for her that she deserves to set boundaries and protect herself too, that women deserve it.
Right.
So when you set those boundaries even with her to
Yep.
teach her what a human being deserves, she's able to internalize that, and she will then be able to take that and apply it to other people. Those same boundaries that
Right.
you just set, she's absorbing, and then she'll put into place with someone else who's been bullying her.
Right. Exactly. And to me, it's about learning these lessons in life, because it's not, again, for her, it doesn't matter. It could be in her school, it could be in her extracurricular activities, it could be at her dad's house, it could be wherever. And it's probably leaking into all of them, but it's like, oh, how do we now get to this next right step? How do we get to this next place? And it's really quite fascinating. And, I just hope that those of you who are watching love yourself enough to actually start to be able to witness in your own lives, to if you regulate your nervous system, and then you can start to see going, oh, right now I'm trying to fight with everybody. Like I'm the gloves are on, or I'm checking out. Like I'm just disassociating.
Well,
You
the
know,
problem is, I'm someone who's fairly self-centered in a lot of ways. Because I'm sensitive, which means that I'm going to protect myself many times more than other people will, because I'm more sensitive and people aren't going to respect that. So I'm totally going to protect it. And when we are stressed, we're only damaging ourselves. So I have no desire to rip myself apart internally, or to carry all that extra weight, or to puke every day, or to cry in the bathroom alone. I don't want to do that. And if I don't want to do that, it
right.
means that I have to stop reacting, and I also have to set boundaries so that I'm not triggered over and over. And
Mm,
I have to calm myself down and treat myself with love first,
right.
because otherwise no one else is going to care that my body is destroying itself. And
Mm,
then they'll be mad at me if it does destroy itself, because then I left too soon. I don't win either way,
right.
you know? And so
So true.
giving and suppressing this stuff kills you.
Does. It does. We don't realize, because I always say we work it out or we act it out. We do it through our money, through our health, or our relationships. And I have watched so many times that things have impacted people on a health perspective when we can't get to this place of being the observer and go, oh, because I was reminded by someone who does some health stuff for me. Well, Jewel, this issue for you is going to keep rising until you stop behaving in the way in the world that's creating the sickness in your body. And I
Yes.
know this. I've taught this for years. I learned this when I was working with Deepak Chopra back in 2007. I worked with him for about a decade, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've watched it act out in people's bodies. And you know what? I remember in 2016 when breast cancer was coming up, I was like, they found a lump. I was like, no, 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 I don't need to manifest this to shift my life. And then all of a sudden I addressed what was going on in my marriage. And then every 3 months, the mammogram, the lump got smaller, smaller. And then after 4 of them, it was gone. They're like, yeah, it was nothing. It just went away. And I was going through marriage counseling at the time and addressing all the stuff that was the unspoken language going on in my marriage. And then sure as heck, like right after that, then all of a sudden I wasn't feeling right. And I'm like going, what's going on? So I went and just had a bunch of blood tests. And they're like, well, you got some kind of autoimmune disease brewing, but we don't really actually know what it is yet, but we can tell that your numbers are a little elevated here. And I'm like going, no, 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 I don't need to manifest that either. And I addressed And then I found myself filing for divorce a couple months after that. And now my blood levels have been fine ever since. And that had nothing to do with the marriage per se. It was just that I was not authentically being me in the world. And I was able to finally now get back in alignment with me and who I was and who I am and create that happiness from that place. And
So
it's fascinating.
physically, we talked about the five, stress response patterns, and then the not stress response pattern. In the body, anything that's a stress response pattern is your body literally contracting and shutting itself down, and it narrows the blood vessels, and
Right.
it narrows the blood vessels to the skin, and it shuts down your digestion.
Right.
It makes your muscles more brittle and less able to be fluid
Right.
and move, and it constricts brain, blood to your head, especially if you're not saying something, the jaw, the neck, and then
Right.
you end up with, or if you're constantly suppressing things, your body starts attacking itself because it can't get
Right.
that inflammation out.
Right.
So if someone notices they're in a stress response, the only answer is to get uncontracted.
Right.
So you have to go do something that lets you open back up, get everything flowing and moving again. Because
Right.
if you don't, then wherever you've been holding on to that stress, old injuries, old memories, you know, um, people would have old memories sometimes of their mother slapping them in the face, let's say, and then they would, after a while, develop a facial thing, because it's the stress response.
Right. Right.
So our bodies can't maintain being in a fight or flight response indefinitely. It's supposed to be there only 20% of the time, but we're in that nearly 80% of the time. And so our body starts breaking down because it doesn't have the resources to keep working at a level of being deprived
Totally.
and in a desert, a nourishment desert,
Yep.
you know? So you
Totally.
really have to go to King Spa if you want to save your life.
Darn.
I know this is the biggest thing I fight with women. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, your homework is to go to the beach. Your homework is to go to the spa. No, I don't have time for that. I have to get all this work done first. Maybe I'll go on my birthday. That's in 3 months. No. If you're behaving like this, you need to go today.
Yeah, you
You
really
need
do.
to go within the next 30 seconds. You need to go do something that
Right.
makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only answer, is to
Right.
get reconnected with the power of women, which is community,
Right.
which is self-love, which is
Right.
care.
Yep.
That's what we're designed to do.
Totally. One step at a time. Rita, how do people find you to help?
They can find me at ritahickmancoaching.com. And on that website, I talk about how I help women in narcissistic relationships. But I also help with co-parenting. And so I'll help families or individuals, parents, figure out how to deal with the drama around co-parenting in a way that their kids don't suffer, and they're able to grow through it and not end up traumatized by it, and then dealing with it when they're 50.
Because at some juncture you're dealing with it.
If people feel like having, yeah, at some juncture you're dealing with it, they're moving back in, they're bringing, their boyfriend with them, and you're supporting all of them.
Or
So
you're having
you
to
either fix
financially bail
yourself
them out,
now,
right?
or
Yeah. So true.
right, exactly. So you either do it now, or you wait and have it come back and bite you in the butt later. Or you wait for yourself to get diagnosis of cancer, get a diagnosis of autoimmune disease. You can wait till that, or you can start working on your natural stress response and reversing that as soon as possible. And that's what I help people do, is reverse that stress response so that they're like you. They can handle it when life happens, and they
Right.
don't get clogged and bogged down by their own emotional reactions because it's cleared off of them.
So true. I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, I love you. And thank you
Love
so much for sharing your brilliance with all of us.
Yeah.
And we will see you next week.
See you next week. Bye, Julie.
Bye.